Hello, I'm Bob Wilhelm. I'm a storyteller. The project that began many, many years ago has evolved, and I'd like to share it with you in this coming year. I started the School of Sacred Storytelling back in the early 1990s, and as part of it, I created a series of books that use stories from the peoples of the world, to develop some of the themes in the lectionary cycle. Now, the lectionary is the book of biblical passages that's used during worship, and most churches use a lectionary. Different churches use different lectionaries, so the Orthodox and the Eastern churches have their own set of various lectionaries, and the Western Church now, because of liturgical reform and the good relation between Protestants and Catholics in the past decades, this has resulted in a revised lectionary, so that our lectionaries are quite similar. Indeed, they're mostly identical from one Sunday to the next. The revised common lectionary of the Protestant churches and the Roman lectionary of the Roman Catholic Church. So these scriptures, it's really the Bible, but it's the Bible not arranged by order of chronology or the books that were created, but key stories, key passages in the Bible set side by side, because there's a very important principle in interpreting the Bible, and that is that each part of the Bible helps illuminate another part of the Bible. So in some of the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, we get background and deeper understanding of the gospel, and it works the other way around too. The gospel episodes are stories that reveal the fuller and richer meaning of Hebrew scriptures for those people who are Christians. So it's the lectionary in the Western Church now, the revised common lectionary used by Protestants, and the Roman lectionary used by Catholics are again just about identical. There are a few small changes, but the stories that I tell every week during the year, through the 3 years actually, because the Western lectionary now covers not just 1 year as it originally did, but 3 years. And the reason for this was the reformers wanted to include more scripture from each of the gospels, the synoptic gospels, the three earlier gospels, Mark, Luke, and Matthew. And rather than having bits and pieces of them scattered about in 1 year and then repeated the same year after year after year, the decision was made back in the 1960s to devote an entire year to one of the synoptics, and of course including the fourth gospel, the Gospel of John, for special occasions, special feasts, and so forth. So we are now approaching cycle B, cycle A, cycle B, and cycle C. And in cycle B, which begins with the Advent season in 2017, and which will go for the full year till the end of 2018, when we move on to cycle C. Well, these scripture stories are all collected in my book, and that book is also a book that contains stories from the peoples of the world. Sometimes this is called enculturation. In other words, taking the insights, the spiritual wisdom of the various traditions around the world, the various peoples of the world, and using them in order to more deeply understand not only scriptures, but our own lives and our own spiritual journey. It's a very important principle in church life, to embrace the cultures of the people to which the gospel is brought. And so these stories are from Africa, they're from Europe, they're from Latin America, they're from Asia, they're from the Middle East, and they're mostly folk tales. So some of them are legends, and some are biographies, and some of them are myths, imaginative stories. And they are told every week in connection with the lectionary readings from Scripture. So I invite you to join us for a weekly online seminar. We we meet 3 times during the week. I ask you to sign up for one of those times, but however, if you can't make it, if you're not feeling well, or if you have some engagement that you must be at, and you can't come on the day of the week that you are registered for, that you just let me know, and I'll hook you into the other session in the week that you can attend. And I'm doing this because I want to keep the sessions generally small sessions. They're actually limited to 7 people and no more. And that's so that we have an intimate sharing. That we're not a big group. We're not a classroom setting. We're spiritual pilgrims who are exploring the scriptures and exploring the storytelling traditions of the world. These will enrich our prayer life for all of us. So this is meant for everyone as part of a spiritual discipline. There's a phrase, Lectio Divina, which is reading the scriptures as part of a spiritual guidance. And I'm calling this Narratio Divina. Narratio meaning not the written lecture so much as a spoken stories. And this Narratio Divina, this divine storytelling, sacred storytelling, that's what it means, is a very, very important way of journeying deeply into our beliefs, our values, our personal pilgrimages through life. And so I invite you to join. It's the enrollment is on a sliding scale, so you can pay varying amounts out of the 3 options that are given, so that if you are pressed for money, that it isn't such a burden for you. You can enlist at a lower price. And if you really want to support our ministry and the work in sacred storytelling, you can also choose the highest price, which is a little. And then of course there's the middle price. The middle price is what I suspect most people will probably opt for. But if you wish to support us with a little more financial support, I myself would be very, very grateful. So that's sort of the background on what this is about. You will have access to the ebook. It is an ebook that is published by Apple. It's an iBook technically. Now you may say, well, I don't have an Apple device. I have various Microsoft devices. I don't have an iPhone. I have an Android phone and so forth. And I know that's an issue. And I apologize beforehand, but when I made the decision to do these books, I really needed to find the one that was easiest to design and the one that in its presentation is the most elegant. No scrambling of text when you change the size of the fonts, or moving around the pictures and text as you scroll through it, as almost always happens with all the Windows, Android devices that are ebook publications, EPUB. That's sort of the standard. So the Apple is really a masterpiece. It is a gem. So what do you do if you don't have an Apple? You're not going to be able to participate in the seminar unless you can read this. And I can suggest 2 things. I've written them down, but I want to talk about them now a little bit more. The first thing is you undoubtedly have a friend, a colleague, a family member who has an Apple device. I mean, half the people in the world have Apples and half the people in the world have Android. So, I mean, it kind of balances out. Chances are that in your circle of acquaintances and friends and family, you've got a little bit of both. So have them do it. Have them do it and listen with them. So, it's a wonderful way of sharing, to listen to stories together, to be in a storytelling circle. So it's not just between me and you, or me and the people who are online for the seminar, but it's between you and someone who is close to you. And as you have them treat you by playing the video and what's in the ebook, you can journey with them, or they can journey with you. It's very, very important to journey with a soul friend. It's really, really important. That's an insight from Celtic wisdom, Celtic spirituality. The other thing is that if you are in a school, if you are in a church and doing parish work, or if you're in other organizations, chances are that there's an Apple device. It could be any Apple device. It could be an iBook. It could be a desktop Mac. It could be an iPad. It could be an iPhone. That the organization you're affiliated with will have it. And Apple is especially friendly towards educational groups. So lots of schools are based on not a Windows system, but an Apple system. So check into that first of all. See if your church or your school or whatever has an Apple and whether you can use it and you can download it. There's a bonus to this. If your school or if your church or if your organization has it, and you download it, on their device, whether it's a phone or an iPad or a big computer, doesn't make any difference. Anybody can use it who has access to it. So, I mean, it's a gift. It means other teachers, other people in ministry, other family members. I mean, it can be shared. And so the expense of buying the books, which is about $39, can be shared for many. And on these devices, they can be shared through the media in group settings. So, for example, if you're leading a discussion group, if you're teaching a class, or whatever it is, you can use the device and not just use it privately for your viewing, but you can hook it up to other devices and put it up on a big screen, a projected screen, or a number of monitors, or whatever. It's whatever the institution has to utilize things like a single device and share it with many, many people. So check into that. And if you don't, you may want to actually buy something like probably the cheapest thing to buy from Apple is an iPad, a mini iPad even. They're about $300, $350 somewhere around that, but they're really, really superb. Now, I have no interest in this financially. I don't own Apple stock. I never worked for Apple. I don't get any commissions from Apple. I'm not a reseller or anything. I'm doing it because it's the best of all possible devices for doing ebooks. And I say this after researching it very, very carefully. You compromise with all the other formats. And with an Apple, you get just a beautiful, beautiful layout, presentation. I mean, everything about it makes you want to go into the ebook and soak yourself in it, and go back to it and enjoy it. So yes, it is an expense, but I ask you to consider it if the other options don't work, because I think it's well worth it. Unsolicited testimonial here. I've been using Apple devices since 1984, and I have used other devices over the years, and on balance, now not with everything, but on balance, you get what you pay for. And the Apple devices are much superior to all the other devices that are out there. And that's because Apple matches the hardware to the software, the operating system and the software. When you're doing, you buy a Dell computer and you're using Microsoft software, and you've got issues of incompatibility that have to be worked around. And it's that with all the different manufacturers that use Microsoft or any other format. So this is just my feeling, my evaluation. You may not feel the same as I do, but I'm saying it's a way of having a wonderful resource and being able to use it very, very extensively. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and I will stop. We will meet for an hour and we'll discuss the readings for the week. Sometimes we'll start with the scripture reading, sometimes we'll start with the story, the folk tale, the legend, whatever. And we'll see where the group goes. What are the things that came out of it for you? How has it helped you in either your personal spiritual journey or your professional work? So one of the things that will happen is that in any given any given session, let's say on a Tuesday morning or on a Wednesday evening, there will be people not only from different parts of the world. There will be people from Australia and Britain, and it's going to all be done through Skype. It's probably the best format for doing it. Skype is free, so all you have to do is sign up for Skype, and you don't have to pay anything for it. And I, as the organizer, I need to have your Skype name, and then when we're beginning a session, I put all the names of the people that are registered for the course into that, and you all appear. All of us appear on screen, and it's very lovely. I mean, it's like sitting around a table and sharing with people. And it is not impersonal. I mean, it really is not, because it's not just one way. It's not I'm lecturing at you or some terrible thing like that, but we are dialoguing with each other and we're sharing what we have discovered. So that's one thing. And there's wonderful diversity in having people from different areas, having someone who's in Hawaii, having someone who's in Scotland. All you have to do is be able to speak English. That's sort of the common. You have to have a Skype account, and you have to be comfortable with English. It doesn't have to be your first language, but you have to be comfortable with it. And the other thing that's so important is that this isn't being divided up into classifications of this is for preachers who might want to enrich their preparation for their homilies, their preaching on Sunday, or this is for a church school teacher or a faith formation director, a catechist who's working with children or teens or adults and wants to prepare for that also. Or this is for some people who are aware that we are on a spiritual journey and they're trying to deepen their own prayer life, they're trying to deepen their own understanding of scriptures, and their love for stories. Because I think you have to love stories to want to do this seminar. And I think that mix is really, really good. I think it's really good. We don't need to work with people who are in our own area, or all preparing homilies or something like that. We need to hear from everybody across the board who bring different insights, people of different ages, people of different gender, even people of different religious traditions, though this is meant basically for Christians. There's no reason why someone who is a Jew or a Muslim or a Buddhist or a humanist or a secularist who has an interest in the scriptures, who has an interest in storytelling and myth making, cannot also participate. There's no proselytizing. There's no converting. That is not part of who I am, and this does not happen in any seminar that I do. When I was a university professor, I taught comparative religions. I gained tremendous respect for other religious traditions: Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, native peoples' traditions, Native Americans and other peoples around the world. And also in my training in psychology, I am a trained Gestalt therapist, and I'm also a serious student of Jungian studies and archetypal psychology. I'm not trained in that, but I'm a lifelong student in that, and I've been on a board for a local Jungian group and organized seminars and stuff like that. But I was trained by my teacher, George Rosner, from the Gestalt Institute of Toronto, to be a Gestalt therapist, to understand how Gestalt works. And Gestalt's a very important tool in understanding how stories work. So my background in teaching comparative religion, world religions, my love of stories, my lifelong love of stories. I learned storytelling from my mother when I was a boy in a very traditional way. And my work in spiritual direction, my work in psychological counseling over the many, many years, and my formal training in those areas all mix into this. So I think that these weekly discussions are essentially prayerful reflections on stories. Cosmic stories, ethnic stories, our own personal stories, our community stories, scriptural stories, many, many different kinds of stories as we try to make sense this life that we are living. So if you are a professional, if you preach every Sunday, for example, come and help enrich your own understanding of the gospel stories with some of these other stories. And if you are an amateur, like I am in so many things, not a professional, but someone who loves stories, someone who sees stories as an opportunity to do a kind of a prayerful reflection. It's a beautiful art form, and it can be very, very prayerful. It can be humorous, and it can be joyous, it can be sad, you can laugh, you can cry, it can be great drama, it can be great picture painting. The stories do all these things. If you love stories, you will benefit from this. So sign up for the short session. That is for 4 weeks. If you're unsure that you want to explore this, but I really suggest that you sign up for a long session. It's 10 weeks. So you get a much better price deal on it. It makes it easier for me to manage all the records and everything to keep everybody on schedule and to, updated and so forth. So if you're willing to sign up for a long, and I think the long session, the 10 weeks, gives you a much better sense of what this is about than the 4-week session. And you can, you don't have to renew. There's no automatic renewal program. I don't believe in stuff like that. And you may find it worthwhile. You may find it was interesting, but you are going to move on to other things, and that's fine. And you might find that you need a break. After doing it for 10 weeks, you need a few months off, and then maybe you'll go back to it again. And you'll have the book, and you can sign up at any time. You don't have to wait for the beginning or the end of the month. You can just sign up for the coming week, and you'll get your sessions all scheduled. And again, if something happens, let's say you're sick, let's say you have a family crisis, let's say you've got to travel somewhere and do something, or let's say you're going to someplace where there's no good internet connection and you know that you're not going to be able to be online, just let me know. Let me know. And if you can reschedule, if you can come to one of the other groups within that week, you would be welcome. But once you're set for the 10 weeks or the 4 weeks, that's the time frame you have. And I will also be encouraging people who are in the seminar, our small group, maximum of 7 people, no more than 7 people, anywhere from 1, 2 actually with me, to 7 others, and me as the 8th one. That's the range. And I'm going to encourage people to do some of their own work, to share resources, to record, not only to write about some of their reflections as well as chat about them during our sessions, but maybe you'd like to tell some of the stories. Make a video of your telling a story, or at least an audio file of your telling a story. That's very frequently easier than making a video. Usually you need another person, a camera person, to do that for you. And share it with us. And it enriches all of it. It enriches all of us. So I'm going to bring this to an end now. I invite you to come and journey with us with the Innkeeper's gift this year. And I think you will find it a wonderful experience, deeply insightful, an exploration into words and images, an exploration into themes, and all reflecting on our own lives, our own beliefs, our own journey on this pilgrimage that we call life. And I especially invite you, if you are in any of the Western churches, Catholic, Protestant, Anglican, however you wish to describe yourself, that's fine. The Revised Common Lectionary, the Roman Lectionary are just about identical, and we share that tradition. And if you are from outside the tradition, you belong to the Eastern Orthodox Church, for example, and use a different lectionary, it'll still be good. You'll still find enrichment in the stories, and you'll be able to use them when those stories appear in your lectionary. Let's say you're a Greek Orthodox or a Russian Orthodox. And finally, if you are non-Christian, if you are a Jew, a Muslim, a Buddhist, practitioner of native indigenous religions, you're most welcome. I have a great love for the tales, the stories, and the values of the religions of the peoples of the world. And I think they can all teach all of us something very, very important that we can use within our much more specific, narrower tradition. It's wonderful to have people from many perspectives sharing a journey together. So I'm going to stop. Welcome. We start at the beginning of the new year, and you can join at any time